Hi, everyone. I am here with Lisa Lucca to talk about her memoir, Ashes to Ink. Thank you for joining me, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me, Annie. I really appreciate it.
I am so excited to talk about this incredible book that you've written. I want to just jump right in and tell us why you wrote your memoir.
Well, I think in part just because I always felt like I had an interesting story to tell, but I also wanted other people to understand that how toxic family secrets can be and how powerful it is when we reveal them, that there can actually be a lot of healing on the other side of that. So, and also to point a little bit of a spotlight on LGBTQ families and to show how far we've come. Even though we think we have so far to go, it was so different 50 years ago. And so I wanted to share that story.
Yes, it was very eye-opening, for me as I was reading it too. So yeah, I could understand why you wrote this. So I really love the title. So Ashes to Ink. Talk a little bit about the title. And the cover is gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Actually, I designed the cover.
Oh, you did?
Um, I did. Ashes was always somewhere in the title. I had many working titles over the years that I wrote it. And because the story opens with receiving my father's ashes and how eventually this story evolved into something I would write. I love the idea of combining the ashes to ink, and then also the fact that I keep his ashes a little bit in an inkwell was kind of the launching off point when I was coming up with the final title.
Yeah, and I thought it was so well done. Not often do I see a memoir. I see it like in chronological order a lot, and yours is present and past. And I love the interchanging of the, like when you had in the first paragraph of a chapter where you were in life at the point, and then you went back. And that was very engaging. It was something new.
Thank you. I started the story with that premise, and it was actually going to be alternating chapters, but that didn't quite work. And then it went away, and it was all chronological. But I kept pulling at me to come back to that second braided thread of current day, and it allowed me to tell a lot more of the aftermath. We go through grief when someone passes, and then there's the aftermath of how the roller coaster goes and how the family all are challenged by grief in different ways.
Yes, yes. I thought you weaved that perfectly. So, as you were writing your memoir and reflecting on your journey, what has the writing of the memoir taught you about life?
Well, first of all, the power of acceptance. We don't always have to forgive the people that have hurt us in the past, but finding acceptance of what is, and who people are, particularly in a family when we're not choosing the people that we come into the world with and through. I think that was probably the biggest lesson, and that reflection can be so healing because you get to see your own part in your story, and a lot of times we are part of the problem.
Well, yeah, oftentimes. That's
All of us.
that's some great self-awareness there.
Took a
So
while.
I love that idea of accepting, and that's so powerful to accept what has happened and moving forward. And I think that's a really good lesson to take. The other thing that resonated with me is this whole concept of being a mother and trying to figure out how you're not going to lose yourself in your relationships and what you want to do with your life. So I think a lot of women can resonate with this. And so what advice do you have for someone who's, maybe, pouring themselves into motherhood and not it, but is really wants something else, like in on top of that?
It's a balancing act for sure, and of course, my mother wanted to be a wife and mother. That was what she wanted most. And so my dreams of a big career and just seeing the world and all the things I wanted to do, motherhood felt very limiting to those dreams. And so my biggest advice is to keep those dreams alive, to create something outside yourself, your family, your marriage, something that's just you in the world, whether it's a garden or your signature meal. Even if you're feeding these people, allow the creation of anything that comes from your soul to really nourish you and to set good boundaries. That part of it is really hard for women. And I see younger generations like yourself who are doing really wonderful things in the world. And whether they have spouses or families, they have a much better sense of showing up for themselves than my generation, certainly my mom's, so I feel like we keep opening those doors a little bit wider all the time.
Yes. Yes. I agree with you. And you said something that really was like aha to me. There are some women who want to be a wife and mother, and that's what they want to be. They want to be homemakers, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that to me is eye-opening when I look at some people, some women in my family or some of my friends, and I'm like, wow, that is amazing. That is noble. That is what you want to do, but not every woman wants to follow that path. So
No, it takes a really special woman to have that kind of, I don't know, selflessness,
yeah.
in the sense of putting all of their energy, time, passion into other people.
Yes.
I think it can go either way. And I think it's important that we continue to promote self-care for all women,
Yeah.
whether they want to be wives and mothers and homemakers, or they have big, huge careers or juggling both. We have to promote self-care.
Yes. Yes, I agree. So you've lived a very fascinating life. I mean, gosh, starting out with you love the music business and you loved working with bands. And I just thought a lot of what you wrote about in your early years and going forward is just amazing. So what life lessons as you're going through, do you want to share with others?
Well, figure out what you love and do it. I mean, I think that, as I became a life coach later on into my 40s, I learned the power of helping other people find what that passion is. It's not always right at the surface. You have to sometimes dig deeper. But I knew that I had a passion for music and for travel, and I wanted to see the world from the side of the stage, as it were. And I promoted my boyfriend's band in high school and dropped out to, go. I mean, I had not a path you could take today. I don't think you could do what I did in the 21st century, but I still think you can take those kind of risks um, and know what you love.
Yeah.
Know yourself and know enough to know what lights you up and what is true to who you are.
Yeah, and I think the younger generation, I'm going through some of this with some family members, they feel a little lost, I think. And I want to encourage them to find what lights them up, but I don't know, it's kind of hard. Like I don't even know where they need to start, you know?
Yeah, it's a balancing act in the sense that, I think a lot of people in my generation brought up our kids, my son will be 30, to do whatever they want and to, find their bliss and their dream.
Yeah.
I think the piece that's missing though is you have to start at the bottom most of the time. You
Yes.
have to sometimes still do the job that you don't like to
Yes.
get the experience to have the one you want. And I think that there might be this myth for the younger generations that you just launch out of high school or college into your dream job. It
Yes.
doesn't necessarily work like that. You still have to kind of rise up through experience to get where you want to go.
That is excellent advice. And I'm going to have to tell that to my daughter. Because I didn't get my dream stuff either until later in life. A lot of times it doesn't happen until way after 40, which was resonating with me as well when you said in here how you had a conversation, I think it was with your friend Mary, where you talked about after you turned 40, you're like, oh my gosh, I thought I would be more settled now. I thought I would have everything, ready and all my dreams met, but that's not always the case. And that's very profound.
Thank you. Well, it's also truer, I think, for these younger generations who are taking their time about a lot of things, aren't getting married as young, are having sort of, starter careers, because if they don't get their dream job, then they're just going to do whatever, and I think that life is not supposed to just be easy, having a challenge can be thrilling.
Yes.
Because then when you achieve something, you can get really excited about it.
Yes. Yes. Oh gosh. I just love this talk so much. You're motivating me. You're inspiring me. So let's talk about the mechanics of Ashes to Ink. What was it like writing, and what was the hardest part of it?
Well, any big piece of work, when you get to the middle, it's so hard because you just feel like you've been doing it forever and there's so much left. I wrote it, it was much, 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 much longer, and I had to trim actually pieces that will go into my next book. But I think using that braided time helped me because I could tell more of the current story and cut out chunks of the time. There's a time jump towards the end, and it felt seamless a little bit because we know so much leading up to that last scene. So I think for me, it took about 7 years to write the book, and 4 really working on it all the time. Not full time, but consistently. There were chunks I'd put it away for a few months, and my family had, a roller coaster about whether or not they wanted me to write about this. My dad was gone, but my mom and my sister had opinions about me writing about them. And, being sensitive to all of that. Yet I think that the supportive writing community was what got me through it. I am in lots of different groups, and I worked one-on-one with peers who had memoirs, and we'd swap pages, and having that kind of support has made all the difference as a writer.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just loved it. And I think when I was reading it, I did come across that time jump. You didn't really go into how you got reconnected with Mark, I don't think.
Not in depth. And there was a couple of reasons for that. One was it sort of took away from the primary story of my healing with my dad. And I think once I got to that moment of true acceptance and forgiveness with him, that was really the end of the story, and then the aftermath of that. And it feels like it's another book. So it's
which I cannot wait to read.
Well, it is in the works. I am working on it. This has been kind of a challenging year so far, but I'm getting back to it. But I really felt like there was enough of him in the story to keep the reader intrigued that he was a character we wanted to continue to remember.
Yes, oh, definitely. And the one thing that I loved about the book, because I have the same type of philosophy, is this whole, I don't know if you would explain it this way, but the universe, sort of how the types of books you were reading mean, I think Mark introduced you to some of this philosophy with crystal. I think it was crystals, and I caught it where you said, "Oh, one day I'll just be living with Mark in New Mexico," and that just I just went, "Whoa!" You wrote that down, and then you manifested that, and
Did.
I just love that whole notion. Do you want to talk about that a little bit about how your philosophy about the universe?
Yeah. Mark and I call it future pull. Like I wrote that in a journal in 1990 after a really sweet experience with him, in which um, I, it felt offhanded at the time, but at the same time, it was such a knowing, right? And we've spent, all these years as friends where if we want something, Mark would say, well, put it in an ashtray with a crystal, and we have lots of them around the house and stuff. But I think the biggest lesson is we are master manifestors. All of us are, because what we focus on does grow, and where we put our attention does have power. So being mindful about that and intentional about that can be so life-changing.
Yes.
And that's, I think, at that moment in time, future Mark and Lisa were calling back to me to write it down, so that when I was writing this book, mostly about my dad, and I'm reading all my journals, and I get to the part where it's 1990, so I'm reading that journal, and there it is, literally living in California at the same time and having to make a change. And it's just like, oh, we're going to go live in New Mexico. That's where we're supposed to go. Made it really easy.
Yeah. You're like, oh, my journal, my past self guided me.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's what it felt like. And there's nothing about this that we don't like. So it was really quite prophetic.
Yes. Love it. So what is one thing you would want readers to take away from your book?
Well, there's I think taking risks to live true to who you are, that sometimes we have to disappoint other people to do that, but that the alternative is always disappointing ourselves, and that's not okay either. Secrets can be really toxic, especially in families, and sometimes the risk to speak the truth can actually create a big healing. I was shocked on some level that for all the tension in the beginning of my writing this, with talking about it with my family, that by the time I'd written it and they read it, it created a huge healing.
Yes.
With my sister. And so trust your instincts about those little messages that we get, and write things down. I think having had the journals that I did that helped me while I was doing this, but also to look back at your life and to see where you were in real time is so powerful.
I was thinking about that because was I was just thinking that my daughter should start that. I have done it, but not consistently. But she's 9 and she's had some big things, like really cool things going on in her life. And I kind of want her to capture that feeling in the moment. So I think that is wonderful advice. And also, what I loved about your personality that came through in the book is how you laid it out there for the relationships. You told your truth. And I think you, like you said, you were true to yourself, even if it meant, I don't know maybe going against somebody else's truth, or I don't know how to explain it, but I felt like that was so good that you were able to talk about what was bothering you in a relationship.
Yeah, not for everyone, I guess, but for me, it's really hard to not speak up and the times that I didn't and tried to conform to someone else's expectations, I ended up being miserable, and then I would make everyone else miserable because I was miserable, and I think that that part of it is really important for us, especially as women, to talk about how we feel about things. And I wanted my son to grow up knowing who I am and not pretending that, this is how the world is, to actually see relationships in real time and see them begin and end, and to see, what it's like to be in a family and have differences of opinions. So I think, yeah, speaking the truth is really important.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay, so what are you doing now? You mentioned life coaching.
I'm still coaching. That's been my primary occupation, as it were, for the last 20 years. And I really love that I've been able to help so many people figure out what they care about and how to live the life that they want, and create the life they want. And when they have, it's really cool. And I've toured with rock stars, and it's even cooler than that. Um, I have taken a bit of a break from writing. My mom was quite ill and recently passed, so I haven't been writing much. But I will be writing her eulogy this week, and I want to do it as much justice as I did my dad's. And so for me, I think the next thing will not necessarily get back to my book, but I'd like to write a modern love column and submit that, and about my story with Mark, and have that out there as I'm writing the bigger version.
Yes, yes, that sounds wonderful. And I'm sorry about your mom.
Thank you.
That's tough, and that's wonderful that you get to write her eulogy. And yeah, I love that part about you writing your dad's eulogy as well in the book.
Thank you. I really struggled about whether or not to include the whole thing in the book, but I felt like because it was in scene and I was internally experiencing the words while I was saying them, it felt like cutting any of it didn't feel right. So I just left it as part of the story.
Yeah, it was perfect. It was perfect to the story. So this one about Mark, is that a book that you're going to write? Because I have the next question is, will you write another book? So is that the one?
I will write another book. I really will write our love story. There's a lot of things that were happening in the background. Mark and I actually wrote emails to one another for 10 years. A few are sprinkled into Ashes to Ink. But there is another book that we wrote together and published called You Are Loved, an email memoir. And it's our literal emails to one another for 10 years. So you might want to take a look.
Yes, I think I'm going to take a look.
So that's already out in the world. That's been out there for some time. And then I am writing our story and how, especially love over 50, when we literally got together later in life, can really be a beautiful experience, and how you blend your lives when your kids are already raised, and you're making the decisions that go into the later years, and have the person you're with standing with you in some of the harder times, like right now for us.
Yeah, great. I'll be looking forward to that book too.
Thank you.
All right. So where can people find Ashes to Ink?
Well, it's on Amazon and all of the places you find books. If you want to get it from your local bookstore, you can go to bookshop.org and order it, and pretty much anywhere books are sold. And same with You Are Loved.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Lisa. This was such an incredible conversation.
Ooh, I really appreciate having this time with you today. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you.